If you work really hard and you're kind, amazing things will happen. But first,
Five God on the beat.
welcome to the Deep Focus podcast. As always, I'm your co-host Varun. I'm with my boy Murad.
What's up,
Besides us
bro?
melting, besides melting, man, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm feeling much better than I did before. I had to turn on the fan in my room, so I can cool down a little bit. And I'm exclusively only wearing like cut off t-shirts in the house and shorts. Which I mean, in the time frame of quarantine when I've been wearing sweatpants, this is a welcome change. So this is very nice. How are you?
I'm I'm pretty confident. I'm on my third pair of boxers today, and I'm going to need my fourth one because I'm just
Oh,
drenching in them. It is
God.
awful. It's uncomfortable. It is what it is. If you guys haven't
Hopefully you're
heard
not
yet,
visual and listening to that, you know?
if you guys haven't heard yet, we dropped an episode on Tuesday. I'm talking about in the Fast and Furious. We
Mhm.
did a very spontaneous ranking. Well, I did a spontaneous ranking of our Fast and Furious movies. Not a typical ranking system that we usually do. It was a very quick 1 through 9. Check it out. Obviously, we had our hot or not again towards the end of the episode with a little 5 minute blurb about a spoiler with the Fast and Furious franchise. Sorry, the Fast 9 movie that came out. But we're here today. It's been exactly 1 week that two different things happened. So 1 week ago, last Thursday, we had Conan O'Brien's last show on late night TV, right? Which we will talk about at the back half of the show, second half of the show. I want to deep dive really into that because of the amazing career Conan had, and I know
Mhm.
Murad, he has inspired you in more than ways than one.
Mhm.
But we will also be talking about the whole Britney Spears court drama that happened last week, which we'll deep dive into a little more. So we'll actually just jump right into it today because these are pretty like crazy conversations to have. So
Mhm.
for Murad, for anybody who hasn't truly followed what's
Mhm.
happening with the Britney Spears situation, do you want to take us off and tell us a little bit what's going on?
Yeah, so earlier this year there was a documentary that came out called Framing Britney Spears, right? Essentially, the one thing you have to know before watching this is the meaning of the word conservatorship or what it means in a legal definition. So I have it up here. Conservatorship is a legal status to which a court appoints a person to manage an incapacitated or incompetent individuals or minors' financial affairs, right? So think of it like a power of attorney, because that's how I understood it, right? And I think it's called power of attorney in Canada. So Britney Spears, mega icon from the 90s, huge pop star, known the world over several million times.
I think more than the 90s too. Like even till today, like I know where you're trying to go, but like
Yeah.
the impact that she has even in
Oh,
2021,
absolutely.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it came out and it was essentially highlighting what was happening to Britney Spears in the time that we all were thinking she's going crazy, right? Around, from her very beginnings of like being pushed into superstardom at such an early age to then having that relationship with Justin Timberlake that went very, very public and also ended very publicly to now what she's doing and like what how she's living now from her Vegas residency to her numerous albums that have come out since then. um you it paints a very bleak picture about how we let Britney Spears down. Like, not you and I, not everyone in the public, but the media really let Britney Spears down. And I don't think there's ever been a scathing takedown of the sexism that goes on in the industry and how they treat women as opposed to men. I don't think there's anything this scathing that I've seen yet, right? And I'll admit, I'm not a huge Britney Spears fan, not because I don't like her music, but because I wasn't really exposed to it all too much. Like if Oops, I Did It Again is playing, obviously, like I'm going to sing along because it's still such a fun song. But I was maybe like I don't think I was like one when she came out with those songs, right? So I wasn't exposed to it. It wasn't a huge impact for me. However, I do know how much of an impact she's had for a lot of women empowerment movements and for a lot of the LGBTQ community, right? So the documentary follows her rise to superstardom, her relationships with Timberlake, then Federline, and then her kids with Kevin Federline, and how the paparazzi kept villainizing her and kept saying she's a bad mom, she's this, she's that. Oh, Justin Timberlake said, like, you cheated, or like, oh, he's saying he had sex with you, but you're saying you didn't. So like, are you lying? And they were painting her as this villain, which eventually caused her to, chop off her hair and go through that very public um, mental health breakdown that should have never been that. It should have never been publicized. And Jay Leno, David Letterman, no one should have made jokes about it, because at that time, and they said it, like, they didn't really think about mental health in that way. And so eventually this all leads to her not being in control of her own finances, because her dad, James Spears, is the one who's in charge of her finances. She's not financially independent. Everything that she does has to be approved by, to this day, still has to be approved by her father.
And
And
it's not just the money too. Like, it's not the money that she's coming in. The sad part is that he has control of everything she does.
everything. Yeah.
When it comes to the job she takes, when it comes to the money that comes in, we talked about already,
Mhm.
and when it comes to her personal life, like, if she wants to have a relationship and have children, she has to get permission first.
Mhm.
And that's one of the part of things she was open about in the last week's court case, is that she has heartfelt apology to the fans about not being honest about being her true self, and she hid her
Mhm.
true self from the public. But like, now she's being denied to have a family and not able to
Mhm.
have kids. It's
Mhm.
amazing.
It's amazing in like the worst sense
Like,
possible. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. That's what I mean. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
One of the things that one of the lawyers has said in the documentary was, to them, they had never seen someone who is in a conservatorship ever get out of it, because it is on the onus of the incompetent, quote unquote incompetent, in this case Britney Spears. I'm not saying that she is, but in legal definition she is quote unquote incompetent. It's her job to prove that she's not. And the lawyer said there's never been anyone in any scenario that has ever gone out of being in someone else's conservatorship, which is such a bleak reality to live in, right? Like, maybe for the rest of her life. I mean, of course, granted that, Jane, like, her husband, or her dad doesn't pass away, she still won't be in charge of her own life, right? And having Britney Spears go through that meltdown and then take advantage of that situation and then say, "Oh, I'm in control of all your fine," because her dad wasn't a good guy. Her dad was an absolute shit human being. I'm not sure, Varun, when you saw the documentary, but I saw it just like a few hours ago, so it's very fresh in my mind. And from what they said, like,
It's been a few months since I watched it.
he's been a shit dude. Like, from the beginning, he's told like his friends that, oh, my daughter's gonna be so famous, she's gonna buy me a boat and all that, and like, he was profiting off of her money. He wasn't really in her life all too much, and it's a really shitty situation because she can't be independent, right? Like you said, she can't book whatever gigs she wants. She has to release albums because she's still an active musician. She loves being on stage, but when she goes on stage and when she's allowed to be feeling safe and feeling confident, she can't control any of that. And it's because we took someone who was 16 years old and started asking her questions about, oh, your songs are so dirty, are you a virgin? Or like, even when she was on, I think, Star Search, they were asking, oh, have you ever kissed a boy? And she's saying no, because boys are yucky. And she's like, well, and in one of the clips, the guy who's hosting Star Search said, oh, what about, like, what if guys are older? Like, what if, like, it was me? And I'm thinking, like, bro, she's 10 years old. What the fuck are you talking about? Why are you doing this? Like, don't put someone who is just making music, because at the end of the day, like Britney Spears said, like, no matter what age, girls want to feel sexy. They don't want to feel like they're being controlled. They want, that's why she was such a huge pop culture icon. And then to take that and to explicitly sexualize her to that extent, and then say, you know what, we've brought you to the point of no return. Now you're going crazy. Now your dad's gonna handle you, and you have no sense of freedom. That's an absolute shit thing to do, right? And the media really let her down, and that's the only thing that I get from this documentary. And it pissed me off so much because here she is, like, she could have been, not could have been, she was one of the greatest and nicest people from the documentaries that I've seen.
her career could have been projected to be like a Cher, like a Celine Dion, this
Yeah.
everlasting long career, like a Jennifer Lopez right now, right?
Hmm.
Like she's it's sick. It gets sick to my stomach when I watch a documentary. I do recommend everyone to watch a
Hmm.
documentary if you want to become more educated on the situation.
Hmm.
Uh, but what stuck out to me in that documentary was the questions you just mentioned, Manal Murad, when they were interviewing her about her breakup with Justin Timberlake, was about
Hmm.
her young on Star Search, talking about her kissing boys. It made me feel sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
It really was disgusting. I think more than the media let her down. I think as a population as a whole, she was let down in
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
Right? It's a different story a little bit now because not only are we more educated on her situation, more educated on mental health and abuse.
Hmm.
Right? It's but we shouldn't have needed that to know exactly what was happening.
Right. Absolutely. And it's such a and I didn't know what was so crazy because everyone I knew on Twitter was talking about, free Britney Spears or this, that, and whatever. And I didn't know it because I didn't watch the documentary yet because I knew we were going to talk about it. So I wanted to make sure that I watch it right before we record. So then we have all of these gaps of information filled in by this point, right? So it's a really, really sad, really shitty situation, and I really hope she finds a way to prove that she doesn't need her conservatorship anymore. Because it'd be really cool to see Britney Spears live the way that she wants to, right? Live the way that she had talked about in her songs how many years ago, like 20 years ago, right? To live that lifestyle of just being someone who's happy, just makes music for the hell of it, and that she can be happy again, right? Like from her sister being on the Disney Channel show Zoe 101 to then her leaving because she got pregnant and then everything happened with Britney Spears. Like, of course, like Britney Spears has lived a very tumultuous life because she's had to go through so many things and almost everything was publicized, right? From like a publicized breakup to a publicized divorce to then having paparazzi follow you to your house when you're just trying to see your kids and then being denied, and then people still like saying, hey, smile for us, or are you okay? The last thing she wanted to be asked on that evening in Hollywood Hills was, hey, are you okay? And she snapped, right? That's where you took that photo. That's where the paparazzi took that photo of her looking crazy, smashing the car, because you're capturing someone at their most vulnerable moment and a moment that should not be captured. And then you're asking them if you're okay. Whereas like 20 other cameras are pointing at her saying, hey, are you okay? And everyone's trying to just make sure that you're okay and you're trying to be nice. No, fuck no, you're not being nice. The paparazzi in the documentary said, hey, like, I feel bad about it now, but at the time I was just trying to collect money, right? Because photos of hers were going for $1 million a photo, right? So just I was really disheartened, and I didn't think that I had this much to say, but it's just Britney Spears, I am sorry, right? Like, I, as a society, if I may, like, I'm sorry that this happened to you.
Absolutely, and I think you took all the points, Murad, but all the
Mm.
points that need to be said. If you haven't watched it yet, again, it's called "Framing Britney Spears" or "Framing Britney." It's in for if you're in Canada, it's on Crave
Great.
TV, so please check it out. New York Times is the one who created and
Made it,
produced
yeah.
this documentary. It was released last February, so it's just over a year old.
Mm-hmm.
I really recommend everyone to watch it. It
Mm-hmm.
is phenomenal. Please
Mm-hmm.
check it out. We'll take a quick break, cool ourselves down a little bit, and come back and talk about Conan's career and his finale.
Perfect.
I can't believe Conan's last episode was last week. Like, it is insane. So for those who live under a rock, Conan O'Brien's 28-year run on late night television has come to an end.
Mm-hmm.
He had, as of 2015, when David Letterman walked away, Conan O'Brien was the longest active talk show host
Mm-hmm.
in the US, right? Specifically in the US. So that I'm assuming that means international. And I want to give a title out where LA Times, I believe, captured Conan's career. So from LA Times,
Mm-hmm.
Conan was a late night long-term underdog. Like that, like I don't know how else to describe Conan O'Brien. Like he was the underdog. He wasn't always
Always.
the like when people talk about your favorite talk show host, I could guess how many names look at announced before him.
Mm-hmm.
Right? People say, what talk show host are you watching? I'm watching late now. Who is it? Are you watching James Corden? Are you watching Fallon? Are you watching Kimmel? Or are you watching Ellen? Like, you know what I mean? Like, who are you watching? If for some reason, for the longest time, despite his nearly 3 decades of work on late night TV, Conan O'Brien is never the first name mentioned,
Right.
ever. And I'm guilty of this too. This is not
Mhm.
this is not just everybody. I'm absolutely guilty of this too because with Jimmy Kimmel, for example, I have a attachment to him because his cousin Sal, is one of the co-hosts on a football podcast with Bill Simmons, who everyone knows. I'm a big Bill Simmons podcast fan. I've always followed Bill Simmons' career, and that's how my attachment. Jimmy Kimmel came along because Bill Simmons started as a writer in LA on the Kimmel Show, and that's how
Oh.
everyone sort of met. And Kimmel used to be on ESPN as a sportscaster on Monday Night Football and everything like that. So that's why he's able to host some of the SBs and talk about sports and that sort of stuff. So that's where my attachment to Jimmy Kimmel came from. Conan ended an 11-year run on Conan. So this show's been around for 11 years. That's the first thing that shocked me about this walking away from it. I had no idea that show started 11 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, I thought it was towards the 6, 7, maybe 8 years, but I did not
Fair
think
enough.
above 10 years. It's amazing that he's been in our career in our lives for such a long time, and no matter what you thought about Conan O'Brien, I promise you, there's some sort of work out there that you've enjoyed of his and not realized.
Mm-hmm.
Like until this day, I tell everyone my favorite part of The Simpsons is his 2 seasons on The Simpsons as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best some of the best times on SNL, Saturday Night Live,
It was
is
him.
with Conan O'Brien,
Yeah.
right? And then once he finished that 2-year run of The Simpsons, the reason he continued because he got his first gig on late night,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's what happened there. I want to fast forward a little bit to last week's finale because I'm gonna recap that a little bit because that was such a fun watch.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing is, I didn't watch it that night. I watched the night afterwards because I was watching Too Hot to Handle.
Had to handle. That's right.
Right. Murad sends me a text, essentially saying, "Hey, I'm watching Conan's finale with sort of like a crying face or a sad face. I can't remember." And I
Yeah.
responded back to him, "I'm watching Too Hot to Handle." So it shows where our priorities were. But I definitely did watch the night afterwards. And one thing I really wanted, and I'm glad I got. So if you don't watch anything Conan O'Brien, anytime Paul Rudd comes on a Conan, right? So they're not. So you know how an actor always comes on
The
a late
clip.
night, and they want to show a clip of the new movie.
Yeah.
Paul Rudd has his running joke since beginning of time with Conan, where every time it's like, hey, let's take it to the clip. It's a clip of a movie called Mac and Me. So for those who don't know who Mac and Me is, you're not alone. It's not a good movie. It's actually an ET ripoff.
Yeah.
Right? But every single time, it's a clip of Mac and Me. It was a prank he did the first time when he went on Conan, and it's been an ongoing joke since. Like how Matt Damon is with Jimmy Kimmel.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my two of my favorite pranks on late night TV. So I'm so happy that happened. But like JB Smoove came on, Martin Short came on, Patton Oswalt, Mila Kunis, Jack Black. It was an all-star filled cast. So it just reminds me how big of an impact he really had for a guy that no one really talks about, right? Like he is the most underrated funny man of all time, and I can't think of anybody else who gets less credit than he does from mainstream. People who are in the industry,
Love
respects and put Conan O'Brien on a pedestal as a Mount Rushmore of comedic geniuses.
Mm-hmm.
If with no Conan, there isn't a lot of actors in this industry
Mm-hmm.
because of the impact he's gone through.
Mm-hmm.
He is this lanky,
Mm-hmm.
tall ass ginger who made a name for himself and is bravo, Conan, bravo for the career he had. And we'll talk about some of his career accomplishments and some of the ups and downs of his career in a moment here. But watching that finale, Murad, like what was your question one is what were your thoughts of during that?
Mm-hmm.
And what was and question two is that what was your thought after that finale ended? Not about the finale specifically, just
Mm-hmm.
overall about Conan.
Um, so I'm gonna start off with the second one because as soon as I was watching it, I knew Jack Black was his final guest because they announced it early on, and I was really excited because Jack Black was originally supposed to be Andy Richter, right? Like he was supposed to be Conan O'Brien's sideman, and then Andy Richter got it, and so it was really cool to see it all come full circle because his first interview was with Conan, and they were talking about how he didn't get that gig, right? And then for it to all come full circle, and they were reminiscing about that time, and Jack Black did that amazing rendition of My Way, which you and I both love Sinatra, so that was really special to me, and you could see that meant so much to Conan. When that was finished, I was really thinking like that's 28 years capstoned right at this very moment, right? Like to me, it was very similar to watching Kobe Bryant play his last game, right? Like that was such a long span of a career, and we watched it end. Although ultimately we know that he's still going to continue his podcast, he's going to do that show with HBO, so it's not the end of it, right? But his career as a late night host,
Host. That's a different story.
it's a very and I can't even believe that LA Times wrote that because it's so true, right? Like no one knew who this tall ginger was, and he took the world by storm. Everyone loved him, and I also want to give a special thank you to Lauren Michaels, and I think Lauren Michaels doesn't get enough respect.
Okay.
Uh, I think Lauren Michaels is one of the most influential people in Hollywood since
I
the
think
departure of the golden age.
I think he is the most influential person in Hollywood. I really do. I do believe that.
Right.
He's not. He may not be the president of NBC, but he runs NBC.
He runs NBC, and for him to see this lanky kid and say, you know what, I'm going to give this pimple face motherfucker a show, and to give him a show, and he knew there was something in Conan that we were not seeing because Conan was never on screen. He was always the guy writing the funny jokes for other people, but you never got to see that side of him where he was so quick on his feet. And so for me, I was thinking, thank you, Lauren Michaels, for giving us the chance to see this genius work for 28 years, and for that to be the capstone of his career as a late night host was fantastic. I don't think that show could have ended any better. From him smoking the J with Seth Rogen to like all the Mila Kunis stories that she told when she was on. I think it's fantastic. I love Conan O'Brien, and you know I do, and I think I've made it very clear from the other podcasts. He's the only other podcast that I listen to week by week, and yeah, there's this obsession. I get why some people might not like him. Like his humor is very very different. He's not like a ha ha like that's a funny joke. He's quick, and he's also a physical comedian, right? So and a lot of people don't like that outwardly brash thing.
He makes making fun of himself not cringy,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Do you know what I
Yes.
mean? Like he does it a lot because he knows what he is. He knows who he
Yeah.
is, and he knocks himself sometimes.
Yeah.
But he makes it in a way where it's not cringy. And actually, we'll refute that. I would be, because I don't think it's a comedy that people don't like about him. I don't think it's a style of comedy. I think he taps in every type of comedy
Hmm.
for people to be attracted to. I just don't think people really know about Conan O'Brien. You
That's
see this
fair.
guy, and he's like, oh, he's weird looking. Like, oh, like
Yeah.
it's sad to say, but like, oh,
Yeah,
That
no,
can't be
as
funny.
I know, and Conan would say that he's always called himself like the Irish guy with the beady eyes and the thin lips. Like that's his whole
Yeah.
thing, right? And so yeah, like, and I also do attribute that to the fact that he was on TBS. Not saying anything against TBS, but TBS is not a huge popular network, so it always seemed like he was
At
a
least,
diamond in the rough.
at least for late night.
At least for late night, of course, right? But you know, if you watch Impractical Jokers, you love TBS, right? So I think because, and I know you're going to recap the Jay Leno situation, but I think because of what happened at his departure to NBC, and yes, he announced a show on TBS, but not a lot of people tuned into TBS. But a lot of people wanted to see Conan O'Brien. They were just like, what the fuck is TBS? Because we don't have TBS up here, so I don't know how to watch him, right? So for me, it was relying on a lot of YouTube clips, and his YouTube clips are the short and sweet and punchy dialogue of that only captures 10% of what he actually is, right? And so yeah, I don't know. You want to get into the Jay Leno situation because
Well, that's why I asked the question. What's the first thing you thought of when you walk away from Conan O'Brien about his career? And that's unfortunately the first thing I think of when I walk away from Conan O'Brien, at least in his late night run, when it comes to his career, is that moment in the like in the 2010s when it comes to him going from his own show to the late night show, to the
the
Tonight
Tonight
Show.
Show.
So back in essentially when Conan O'Brien's contract was coming near an end. So right now, Conan O'Brien has already had a talk show. He's been there since 92 or 93. Leno started the Tonight Show at the same time. So they started their talk shows 1 year apart. They both had number 1 and 2 talk shows on late night TV and was crushing it. When O'Brien's contract was essentially coming to an end by other networks in 2001, NBC reached out to him. It's like, hey, do you want to continue working with NBC and have the Tonight Show? And Raw, let me know if I'm missing something. But I'm trying to recap it, but which would make Conan O'Brien the fifth or sixth host of the Tonight Show after Jay Leno walks away. Here's where NBC sort of screwed up. NBC didn't tell Jay Leno about the contract extension, which I'm sure Leno wasn't too impressed with because the like Leno went away anytime soon. But it was supposed to be like a 5-year transition period. So even though this happened like in about 2004, Conan wasn't supposed to take over until 2009. When that happened, when the time arrived, network essentially continued their interest with Leno and kind of put Conan to like, hey, we'll give you this other show instead. That's now anyone who grew up watching like a lot of late night. The Tonight Show is the show.
The show, absolutely.
The detox show of late night. Like that's a show every comedian wants. Right? I'm glad people are creating their own talk shows, and there's some things out there are doing a great job, like the Daily Show and that sort of stuff. Is the phenomenal things. The Tonight Show is the big thing they get, and I'm still disappointed that Jimmy Fallon has it now, but
does not deserve it.
No, right? So that's really what happened, right? That really pissed off Conan O'Brien and his crew and all the employees of that show that they lost the opportunity, and they were like, "Screw it," and ended up leaving and starting their own show on TBS. They ended up being. What's what I'm looking for? I have this quote right down. I believe it's like, oh yeah, so I got it right here. O'Brien's public statements that he would not participate in the destruction of the Tonight Show led to negotiations with NBC for a settlement. So get out of his contract. O'Brien and his staff received 45 million US, equivalent to about $50 million in 2020, to walk away from the network, which made his final show on the Tonight Show because he was on it for about 7 months in 2010. So this whole ugly mess could have been avoided in so many different ways. What's your take on that? And like, do you think like it was never meant to be, or what?
From watching his first episode, because you can watch the entire first episode of his late night or for his Tonight Show on YouTube, right? The glimmer, and he's always talked about the fact that he's wanted to be on the Tonight Show. Like that's what he's wanted to host ever since he got into comedy. and that was his whole thing. He talked about this extensively on his podcast. I think with the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the prestige of the Tonight Show, for that to happen to it, I thought it was terrible. And not just because I'm a fan of Conan, but like you look at all the people that came before Jay Leno, right? You have Johnny Carson, who arguably is one of the most influential talk show hosts of all time. You had Jack Paar, Ernie Kovacs. These are big names. And this show was a staple. The still to this day, one of the staples of late night TV is the Tonight Show. For them to give Conan the opportunities to say, "Hey kid, live out your dreams. Go give it your best." And for him to pull consistently good ratings for 7 months, and then for them to say, "You know what? No, we're just going to go back to Jay Leno," because Jay Leno was being a bitch, right? Like Jay Leno was whining, and they even gave Jay Leno a second show, and they said, "Hey, you can have this second show that goes on afterwards." And then Jay Leno said, yeah, I'll do it. But then all the meanwhile, like strong arming NBC to say, "Hey, give me my show back." I never liked Jay Leno from the first place. I always thought he was cringy. I always thought like, ever since I started watching how he treated the Monica Lewinsky scandal, I've never been a huge fan of Jay Leno because of like, she was the butt of all jokes, but he took so many jabs, and he always looked really smarmy to me. And here came Conan, someone who is genuinely a huge fan of the show and is proven to be a good draw and is proven to be a magnificent writer. And then for them to say, "Hey, live out your dreams for like 7 months and then get the fuck out of here," unbelievably terrible treatment. And I think had they kept the show with Conan, I think we would not be talking about the Tonight Show with angst. I think we would still adore the Tonight Show because we adored Conan. We adored him as a person. I at least adored him as a person. And I was 13 when this was happening, right?
Well, according to NBC, though, okay, you mentioned the viewers, the Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien actually was not doing well.
Was it not?
Months.
From what I read, it
so
wasn't.
According to NBC, though, according to
okay.
NBC, I don't have the hard numbers in front of me, but that's what's their reasoning behind going back to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently that caused a panic to vert everything back, and that's why Conan's 7-month run ended in 7 months, because they weren't seeing the numbers that they hoped to see, not only in Conan O'Brien show but also in Jay Leno show. So it wasn't just one person doing bad, they weren't doing the greatest. So that's the whole run there. But either way, though, just the way NBC handled the whole situation was very ugly. But luckily, that didn't derail his career. Like, he still was able to come back with TBS, as we mentioned already, with the Conan show, or Conan. And we still had a decade plus of a joyful talk show on our TV.
Right.
It is like, it's unfortunate with like, with stars like Kimmel, Greg Corden, whether you think you enjoy him or not, but like Steve Colbert, anybody else, like, and with John Oliver really coming in a strong front with this show on HBO, Bill Maher on HBO, not necessarily a late night show, but very similar format. It's become harder and harder for really anyone to stand out. So especially for someone on a TBS network, and for him, Conan, to keep drawing viewers and keep getting these stars to come to the show. This shows the love and respect he continued to got. So again, what a career.
What a career. Yeah. And I'm not sure if you had sort of heard, but when NBC gave him the money, like, I think they gave him like, I believe it was 40 million. So he got 40 million. He gave almost all of that to his staff because they didn't have jobs. And I think, like, yeah, it could have been really easy for him to say, my money. But like, to say, "Hey, this would not have happened without you guys here. Take this. Hopefully this carries you over until he moves over to TBS." And he brought the same people back. I don't know how much more you need to know about the character of this person, right? Like, his segments with his staff, from, you know, Jordan Schlansky to his assistant Sona and all of the other like remotes that he does, those bring in more viewers than anything else, because he makes sure that he can spotlight the people that help him become who he is. And I know it sounds like I'm in love with Conan. I think I am, but I think I'm in love with the fact that he seemed ever so genuine, and then for him to be treated this way just during that NBC era was really, really shitty. And I'm really glad that Conan, his show on TBS, was able to continue for as long as it did, because of course that whole thing happened with George Lopez where he took over Lopez's slot and things like that, right? So that was whatever. George Lopez's show was not doing numbers, and a lot of people weren't really responding that well to him, but the way TBS welcomed him was fantastic, and I'm really glad that he got to go out on his own terms, on his own comedy style, because I also think he may have been stifled at NBC, right? Like, I don't know how many times he could have had Lorne Michaels like bail him out, because he was someone that is not a traditional late night host. He's wacky, he's crazy, but he's also really good at deep conversations, unlike, you know, Fallon, who's like, hey, you're like this amazing actor, instead of asking you all these questions, let's have you play a game.
Jimmy Fallon is a male version of Ellen. Like, really, at the end
Yeah.
of the day, it's about gimmicks, it's about jokes, it's about pranks.
Yeah.
Like, he's enjoying that.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff is cool, some of the stuff not so much.
Right.
I think, like, if he wanted to go that route, he should have done, like, daytime television is much more casual, right? Like Live with Kelly and Michael, or Kelly and whoever is doing it now, and Ellen and Wendy Williams, like, they're fun shows meant to spotlight, hey, you're just getting up in the morning, why not just have a little fun? But late, like the Tonight Show, when you see Johnny Carson and when you saw people like Dick Cavett, who had his own show, which was not the Tonight Show, that was meant for like discourse, right? There was, I'm not saying you have to be serious all the time, but there was a decorum. There was like a, hey, we're going to talk about some real stuff on the show rather than just trivialize it and all that. So I'm not sure if I sound like old and crotchety, but
Of course you
it
do.
really did seem like it's so trivialized. I don't know. I do. I absolutely do.
No, I get it, but at the same time, I don't. No matter how you think of yourself, if someone offers you to the night show, you take it. And
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy
I don't
Fallon,
blame him.
Jimmy Fallon at the time was like Lorne Michaels, like golden boy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
coming from SNL, so I'm not surprised that he got it.
Mhm.
It would have been probably, if not him, probably like Seth Meyers or someone else who got that. But
He was
well,
a safe. He was an understandable safe pick.
yeah,
Understood.
that was a safe pick. Absolutely, it wouldn't be controversy. He was popular in SNL. Just
Mhm.
he had a good run on the Tonight
The
Show. Like,
late-
it was
Yeah.
like right now the way he was right now. But what's it mean next for Conan though? What's his
So-
next career step look like?
He's still continuing his podcast, which I love because I fucking love listening to
Can you,
that thing.
what's the name of the podcast?
Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. It's him, his assistant Sona, and Matt Gorley, who's like the producer. They do this segment where like the first 10 minutes they have this like banter similar to you and I, and then they bring on a guest. And then Conan brings on guests that he has histories with, right? So Seth Rogen, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, like the SNL crew. Of course, Seth Rogen wasn't a part of that. But he has all these conversations about like his time that they spent together. And then the last 10 minutes is his banter with Matt and Sona again, right? And he's had people from Hillary Clinton to Michelle Obama twice, and then Barack Obama. So he's had really, really fantastic interviews on that podcast. So I'm glad that's continuing. And he's also in talks with HBO to come out with a variety comedy, like a variety type show, right? Where you just go and there's not going to be interviews, but it's just going to be him doing like a variety show type comedy, right? I'm not sure what that entails, the details of which aren't out, but he's signing a deal with HBO to continue. So I'm glad that this isn't the last we see of him on our screens, because for someone who loved being in front of the audience to only get in front of the, I think for his last week there was an audience. Before that there wasn't, right? For someone who craved audience attention so much, for him to go out on that high of only having an audience for his last week would have been terrible. So I'm glad that he's coming back. I'm glad that people are going to get to see him again. I'm glad that I can still see him if I get the chance to go and see his show. So that's what's looking like for Conan O'Brien, right? Andy Richter unfortunately will not be joining him. Their 30-year, well, they're still, I'm sure they're still like best friends, but he won't be joining him in that HBO show. So far it's only Conan. Most likely his assistant Sona will follow as well, who at the time of this recording is pregnant with her twins, which I'm really excited about. I've never been like involved with someone else's life like that, but he makes you fall in love with the people that he's friends with. Like if you go watch his remotes with Sona, they're fucking hilarious and they're so good together.
Yeah.
And I was so excited when she revealed her pregnancy because that's how much Conan wants you to invest in these people because that's how much he loves them. So I'm hoping Sona will still be there and they'll still have their funny banter, and I'm hoping her twins come out. And they had this funny joke where he was gonna name, or Shaq said, "Oh, you should name your twins Shaq and Shaquille." And so I hope Shaq and Shaquille are doing okay. Um, but yeah, that's what the future's looking like for Conan.
Oh, I'm excited, man. Like you could say it's 100 times, but thank you, Conan. But thank you for
Thank you,
not going
Conan.
away. I'm
Mhm.
excited for HBO. I think it's a wrap, guys.
Yeah.
Catch you guys next episode.
Peace out.